Would you like to know how to handle a difficult reading? Stay tuned while I share a tough reading and then 6 steps to help when you're faced with this challenge. Hi everybody, I'm Sue Ellen Clayton. Welcome to my channel where we're learning how to read tarot one card at a time. Today I wanted to talk about what to do when you get a bad reading. And by that I mean a reading when you look at the cards and see a negative outcome that you believe will create a sense of anxiety, fear, doom, or depression for the querent, or if you're reading for yourself, for you. For instance, the querent wants to know that her marriage is going to survive and all the cards point to her spouse leaving, that kind of thing. I will be using the Radiant Rider-Waite Tarot, and there is a link below. I recently did one of these readings for myself, and the results were pretty depressing. I'm going to share the reading with you first, and then I'll share 6 suggestions about how to handle it. I conducted this reading on March 17th, 2025, with a simple question: what can Spirit tell me about the current political situation in the United States? I thought it was a good question because, even though I had my own very strong opinions, the question was neutral. My hope was for Spirit to tell me that things weren't as bad as I feared and to just hang on, and the Sun card would appear in the future position and all would be well. This did not happen. Card number 1 looked at what spiritual disruptions were occurring. I drew Justice reversed. Card number 2 looked at what spiritual transformations were being initiated. I drew the 5 of Cups. Card number 3 looked at what spiritual renewal was possible. I drew Strength. Card number 4 was from the bottom of the deck and looked at the underlying energy of the current political situation. I drew the Ace of Pentacles reversed. Let's begin with my first impressions. I did not see this as a positive reading at all. Justice is about fairness and the rule of law, and the reversed card confirmed my belief that Lady Justice is not doing well at the moment. The 5 of Cups is a card of sadness, so it brought to mind that this is really a dismal time for our country. Strength was really the only positive card, which told me that I have the ability to get through this. And finally, the Pentacles reversed signaled that we're facing an ending and also that the economy is literally falling apart. I looked at these cards for a while and thought, I need to do a YouTube video about how to conduct a reading when you don't like the cards. I'm going to look at each card individually, and then I'll talk about how to handle a reading like this. Card number 1 looked at what spiritual disruptions were occurring. I drew Justice reversed. In the upright position, Justice is a card about balance, truth, and fairness. It can literally represent legal issues. The balance scales in Justice's hand tell me that the universe is fair and we will be judged fairly. We will get relief if we've been wronged, and we'll get punished if we've wronged someone else. In the reversed position, Justice represents dishonesty and corruption. That can include the unequal application of laws, political decisions made for self-interest, politicians who are deceiving you, biased court rulings, or other political injustices. I actually did a bunch of research so I could provide examples of injustice and corruption, and decided to stop and leave it there. I'm going to say that, from my point of view, and I know other people on the other side of the political aisle will vehemently disagree, this is a great synopsis of what's happening in the United States. Card number 2 looked at what spiritual transformations are being initiated. I drew the 5 of Cups. In my opinion, the 5 of Cups is one of the saddest cards of the deck. We see a person wearing a black cloak, which is the color of mourning. His back is toward us and his head is downcast. He's clearly grieving. The figure dominates the card, which I think is appropriate, as grief seems to take over your life. He has 3 gold spilled cups in front of him. When the 5 of Cups appears in a reading, it means that you are experiencing the pain of despair, disappointment, and loss as you focus on what you have lost. This is demonstrated by the cloaked figure staring downward at the 3 spilled cups in front of him. From his viewpoint, he not only sees spilled cups, he also feels isolated from his castle across the river because there's no way to reach it without diving into the flowing water. However, if he raises his head and looks around, things aren't quite as bleak. Behind him are 2 gold upright cups, which represent a gift from Spirit. Toward the right of the card, we also see a bridge, so there's definitely a way to reach the safety and security of his castle. When the 5 of Cups appears in a reading, it can symbolize that you are in mourning or experiencing sadness, grief, despair, or disappointment. The question in this card was about spiritual transformation, and I feel like I experienced a transformation, although it was the opposite way that we usually think of it. Personally, I went from excitement and hope prior to the election to my current feelings of despair. The 5 of Cups can also indicate that you have suffered a loss. It could be a physical, emotional, or spiritual loss, such as losing hope, a relationship, a physical object, or an opportunity. Your current situation is not what you expect it to be, and you're feeling a lot of self-pity. Again, that is completely true and quite the opposite of what I thought life would be like at this moment. So what is the transformation here? It lies in changing my perspective. I have to stop with the mourning and take some action, which, in this case, is changing my perspective and finding the strength to look around. The loss is not going to disappear, but knowing that there are 2 upright cups behind me and a bridge to cross so that I can safely get home will provide comfort and mean that life isn't completely bleak. The fact is that spiritual transformation rarely occurs unless it's preceded by a difficult event. One example is Arianna Huffington, who is founder of the Huffington Post website. In 2007, she was checking email at home when she passed out. She hit her head on the table, fell, and woke up in a pool of blood. She'd been working 18-hour days, and after a lot of medical tests, the doctors reached a conclusion. She was exhausted. Huffington refers to this as the wake-up call that changed her life. And this experience not only started her down the road to getting 8 hours of sleep, but also to spread the word that human beings need to treat their bodies with care. That wouldn't have happened without her injury. In summary, the spiritual transformation that has been initiated is about changing my perspective to include the positive things in my life. Card number 3 looked at what spiritual renewal is possible. I drew Strength. Strength is a card about power that comes from within, and it may be power that we don't think we have. After all, the lion is the king of the jungle. We think of lion tamers in the circus who used whips to show dominance and to create fear in the lion, which kind of breaks my heart when I think about it. Yet she's managed to tame the lion using only her gentle spirit. Strength has her hand over his snout, and his tail is tucked under him in a gesture of submission. When Strength appears in a reading, it is a message that it's time to use your inner strength and a light touch to confront difficult situations. We need to figure out solutions that don't use fear, dominance, or intimidation, and figure out a way to come together for everyone's benefit. Another message of Strength is about patience and taking the long-term view. We don't train a lion in 24 hours, especially without using fear. You need to create trust. It's a process that could take years. I do think that spiritual renewal is possible. However, it will require patience, inner strength, and a spirit of cooperation. Card number 4 was from the bottom of the deck and looked at the underlying energy of the current political situation. I drew the Ace of Pentacles reversed. When the Ace of Pentacles appears in the reverse position, it can mean that you will lose your wealth or security. As we can see, Spirit is no longer holding the gift of the coin. It is falling out of his hand. The loss of wealth and security can be due to corruption, mismanagement, or a disconnect from the needs of the people. I think all three of these currently apply as prices have increased and the stock market has fallen. However, I'll give an example about disconnect for illustration purposes. On March 23, 2025, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, who happens to be a billionaire, said in an interview that, quote, "Only a fraudster would care if they missed a Social Security check," unquote, and he used his 94-year-old mother-in-law as an example. According to the Social Security fact sheet, in people who are collecting Social Security checks make up more than 50% of people's income and approximately 40% of people who are collecting Social Security, and it makes up more than 90% of people's income for approximately 13% of people collecting Social Security. I've linked to the information below. I have to say that I think if Social Security made up more than 50% of my income, I would find it difficult to miss even a single check. So there is a definite disconnect between the current administration and the needs of the people. I'll just summarize by saying that the idea of losing wealth or security for those of us who are not billionaires is pretty scary. As I mentioned, I saw this as being a mostly negative reading, and I wanted to share 6 ways to deal with a negative reading. This will include how to handle the content of the reading and also how to deal with your own feelings. The first thing to consider is that you might be wrong. I think the tarot is an amazing tool for looking at current energies and what might happen in the future, but it is no guarantee. If it was, all tarot readers would be winning the lottery and starting companies that would become the next Apple or Amazon. The United States is made up of a hugely complex group of people, organizations, government, and actions, all of whom have free will. Even the best tarot reader doesn't get it right all of the time. The other thing to consider are our personal biases. It is really tough to be impartial in a reading. I am not a fan of the current administration, so it only stands to reason that my interpretation is going to be a lot more gloom and doom than someone who is celebrating the decisions. So, while I believe 100% that I tried my best in the reading, I will also admit that I could be wrong. My second suggestion is to make sure that you read the cards accurately. I'm a big fan of knowing the original meanings of the cards in addition to using your intuition. I think it's important to look at each card individually and make sure that you're applying a meaning that is true to the cards. Let's look at the 5 of Cups. As I said earlier, it is a card that shows somebody who happens to be grieving, yet if they broaden their perspective, they'll see that things aren't quite so hopeless. The message is also reinforced by the image, so the querent will trust it. They can see the 2 cups behind the grieving person and the bridge over the water. It makes sense to them. We can see that there is a balance between depression and hope. The querent can see the intent of the card reflected in the image. So even if you end up misinterpreting the reading, the querent can see how you got there. My third suggestion is to focus on the lessons. I did this when I talked about the Strength card. Tell people what they can learn and what specific actions they can take that are under their control. One of the lessons was that we need to rely on our inner strength and a light touch to control difficult situations rather than using fear and intimidation. Another lesson was to be patient and to be focused on the long term. I think this would be very helpful advice for people who are stressed out about politics. It never hurts to be reminded to look at our own power and that there's always hope for a brighter future. My fourth recommendation is that you see difficult readings as an opportunity to grow as a tarot reader. Recently, I've had a whole bunch of dental stuff going on that started with a tooth abscess and some oral surgery about 6 months ago. The struggle continues, and following my most recent surgery 2 weeks ago, once again I didn't heal properly and needed more antibiotics. And once again, I had to go back to the oral surgeon extra times, and he was quite exasperated. I'm not sure if he looked at it this way. However, in trying to figure out what had gone wrong, it gave him a chance to grow as an oral surgeon. He originally guessed that this was caused by me having Lyme disease, and if that's accurate, it has been an opportunity for him to learn and something that he can apply to future patients. It's the same thing when I get difficult readings. I love it when I get an easy reading and feel extremely confident of my interpretation and the client is ecstatic, but I don't learn that much. Getting challenging readings allows me to dig deep and really improves my skills. Plus, I think that some of my best readings are ones that I have to work for because it forces me to think hard about what the cards are indicating. Another way difficult readings build your skills is that they teach you to deliver news calmly and compassionately. You don't look completely distraught when you see the cards and say, "Yup, your cheating husband for sure is leaving you and you'll probably be penniless and miserable for the rest of your life." You can use the speech I talked about in point number 1 and calmly state that, even though the reading outcome may appear to be bad, both you and your husband have free will and the outcome is not set in stone. But from what I'm seeing in the cards this afternoon, it seems like it would be a good idea for you to start preparing to live without him in your life, at least for a little while. That said, I always suggest that you don't reshuffle the deck and pull new cards when you don't like the reading. I personally never do this. As the saying goes, I deal with the cards I'm dealt. Pulling new cards robs you of the chance to become a better tarot reader. The next recommendation is about protecting your boundaries. Before we discuss it, if you're getting benefit from this video, I hope you'll take a moment to subscribe. It's free for you and you'll get notified when I post videos so that you don't miss anything. It will also help me to grow this channel. My fifth recommendation is that you learn to protect your boundaries, which is something that is extremely necessary in difficult readings. That's because they cause people to open up to you, which is a good thing. You see in the cards that their husband is leaving, and they share that he's been having an affair for years, and you're the first person they've told. However, recently the husband confessed that he no longer loves her and he wants a divorce so he can start a new life with his lover. When things like this happen, keep in mind that you are a tarot reader, not a mental health practitioner. While you are likely a very skilled tarot reader, you should not step outside your lane. It's not in either of your best interests, for you or them, to become their friend or therapist or financial advisor. Have a list of resources available that they can connect with if they need further help, and if they would like, you can even have them phone from your office. As far as I can tell, tarot readers are not mandatory reporters in the United States, so you have no duty to call the police if a querent discloses that their spouse is beating them or they're considering suicide. However, as a caring human being, I would certainly not ignore this either, and do my best to support them while they call for help. And this is where good boundaries are important, as I don't think it's advisable to take on something that you're not qualified to handle, even if it comes from a place of caring. In addition, stepping into friend mode also means that you would no longer be a good tarot reader for your client, which would be a shame because she clearly highly valued you enough to confide in you. Many years ago, I had a therapist who I absolutely loved. She left the practice and no longer took my insurance, and we became somewhat friends. I did enjoy the time I spent with her, but it was also awkward because she knew a lot more about me than I knew about her. But the worst part was when, a few years later, when I could have used a therapist again, she wasn't an option because we'd crossed those lines. If a querent ends up going through a difficult time in her life, you will do a much better job reading tarot if you're not emotionally connected. A positive point is that difficult readings, such as this one, can be very healing for the querent. It can inspire them to get help and to take actions that will help them to take better care of themselves. My sixth and final recommendation is that difficult readings can be a reminder for you to focus on yourself. First of all, difficult readings are stressful. It's tough figuring out interpretations. It's tough figuring out how to break bad news. And it's tough dealing with the emotional fallout. It's important for you to have rituals or routines to help you cope, especially when you've had a rough reading. Ideas include having other tarot readers that you can share with, or personal ways of coping, such as journaling, meditating, or putting on some headphones and dancing naked in your bedroom. Some people do well with the shower or bath and imagining the water removing the stress from their body. Something else you can do are grounding exercises, where you picture your feet growing into the ground like roots. It's also good to have something you really enjoy, such as a hobby, that you can do for a change of pace. You might also have space-clearing rituals that could include physically cleaning the area, or smudging, or imagining the place filled with white light. In summary, we talked about 6 ways that you can deal with a difficult reading. The first thing to consider is that you might be wrong. There can be a lot of variables, including the fact that people have free will. Number 2 is to read the cards so that the image and message makes sense to the querent. Number 3 is to focus on the lessons that the querent can learn from the reading. Number 4 is to view difficult tarot readings as an opportunity for you to grow as a reader. Number 5 is to view difficult readings as a way for you to learn to protect your boundaries. And finally, the 6th thing difficult readings can do is to reinforce why it's important for you to focus on self-care. I hope that this will help you to conduct a difficult reading for yourself or someone else. Please leave a comment if you'd like to share your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.